This will set the record easily.
Well, it depends.
You never know. I thought my meeting last week was going to be 15 minutes. It was an hour.
It's my dollar.
4, 3.
2, 1.
If we're out by 8.
We're ready? Notices of this meeting were forwarded to the Courier Post, Clerk of the Township, District website, and members of the Board of Education, and posted on the Board of Education offices at 17 Ariel Road, Blenheim, New Jersey. Please note that this board meeting may be audio videotaped. Please stand for the flag salute.
Hey, we'll go this way.
Okay.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This time we can go for it. Yes, there's never.
Taking direction. I was going to make a joke, if they approve the budget, we get a bigger flag.
No.
Okay. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Dentino,
Present.
Mrs. Fritz,
Here.
Mr. Gibbons,
Here.
Mrs. Gilch, Ms. Gore,
Present.
Mr. Marks,
Here.
Mrs. Reese,
Here.
Mrs. O'Donnell,
Here.
Mrs. Johnson.
Here.
All present.
Okay. At this time, we are going to go to the presentation, please, for the budget. Public comments first.
After the presentation, but before the vote.
Okay.
I'd like to present the budget for the following school year, 23-24. Sure I do. Thank you. There we go. The highlights of the budget for next year, we're maintaining all the programs that we have. Nothing is being cut. But in addition to, we're adding additional mental health professionals in each of our elementary and middle schools, which, according to the parents and according to what we have been hearing, is direly needed in our schools. So that's what we're doing next year, since we have the funding to be able to do that next year. We're also hiring a supervisor of clinical services, 8 RBTs, which are registered behavior technicians for the schools, a PM custodial supervisor, and a purchasing agent. We're getting a new parking lot in the Hughes Elementary School, and we're doing renovations to the student bathrooms at Glen Landing and middle schools. Revenues, our tax levy is exactly the same as last year. It has not gone up. Other miscellaneous revenue is $9 million, and our state aid has gone up significantly to $64 million. Typically, in previous years, we've had almost an even split between state aid and the tax levy, but because the state ingested more aid this year, that's over 50% of our budget, our revenue coming from the state this year. If you want details of the revenue, this is our tax levy for this year, $53,831,761. Next year is exactly the same, no increase in the tax levy, as you can see. Okay. Other miscellaneous revenues of tuition, interest, and state aid. You can see that this difference, how much we've gotten more in state aid in the upcoming year than we did in the previous year. I don't think anything else really is of interest to anyone. I don't know. Or is it? Any questions on this slide?
Kath, I would finish and then
Finish and then
they can
Yeah.
have
Pardon me,
questions.
finish?
Finish up there.
We'll go through. Yep.
And the expenditures for the upcoming school year. Salaries are almost 55% of our budget. Benefits are another 18% of the budget. So between the two of them, it's 73% of our budget just for salaries and benefits. And the rest is other operating expenses to keep the district going. That's only 27%. And you can can see, most of the items, the percentages have not changed that significantly from one year to the next. See 22, 23 to 23, 24, the difference and the percentage of change.
You skipped over a slide.
Did I?
Yeah, I think you have two you have two of them.
You said two of these.
So it says continue at the top.
The answer,
Back arrow. Back arrow.
where'd Steve go? Huh?
Right here, back arrow.
I'm not used to this.
There we
Okay, I'm sorry. Instruction. This is a big piece of the budget, the instruction for operations. Out-of-district tuition is a big chunk and has risen significantly this year and next year. We've allowed for that. You had to put more money in the
Guidance
budget
is
this year
significant.
that was not in there because there's so much out-of-district tuition. So next year, we're keeping it comparable to this year, so we don't have to adjust the budget mid-year like we did this year. This is up because we're hiring a supervisor, which was in the highlights. That's why that percentage is so much higher.
And guidance.
And then you saw this one already, so you need to see it again. The taxes. Tax levy for 22 was 53 million. You can see that 338, and our debt service was 581. We had no debt service this year, and we had no debt service for next year. So our total for fiscal year 22 was 53,919,000. For fiscal year 23, this year was 53,831,761, and next year is identical. So 0% increase in the tax levy. We're getting exactly the same amount we got next year as we got this year. This is how much? $1.83 per $100 and a house value to say $200,000. The taxes for 2023 was $23,7822, and for next year will be $23,6554, which is a decrease of $12.67. Even though the tax levy is the same, the decrease is evident, happens because ratables have gone up in the town. So it's spread out over a larger area. Any questions?
Go board first and then open to public.
Anyone on the board have any questions regarding this? Okay, seeing none,
Thank you.
No.
I'd like to open up public comments for agenda items only. Anyone wish to speak?
Yes, I have a handful of questions related to the budget. As I reviewed the online.
Pete, can you just tell us who you are?
Pete Heinbaum, Morningstar Courts, so I reviewed the more detailed version of the budget that was available online today, and thank you for putting that online. And thank you for preparing and completing this budget. I know it's a grueling process with all the moving parts in a New Jersey school district and keeping it a zero tax increase, so congratulations. This increase in state aid, is that deemed to be a permanent increase or just a one-off this year increase? Or is that something we expect to get that same amount of state aid going forward?
We do expect that,
Yeah.
barring any
Yeah.
unforeseen
I mean,
circumstances.
anything can happen in the legislature. Again.
Exactly.
And I do also see in the budget $6.2 million of ARP grant money being utilized as revenue. Is there any remaining, does that use up all the remaining ARP grant money, or is there any still that uses all of it? So we have a zero balance in that grant fund after this revenue is used. Okay. Also related to ARP, I see there's a line item, appropriation line item in the budget to spend that 6.2 million ARP, but it's not, doesn't specify what we're spending that grant money, ARP grant money on? Is there any thoughts about what that'll be spent on?
That's the ESSER, that's the ROD grant, isn't it?
It is. Good evening, Mr. Heinball, how are you?
Good.
I'll handle that. In the last 2 months, the March and April, if I can count backwards, the Board of Education has approved specific HVAC projects. We had an engineering firm, Remington and Burnick, who had done a study. One of the acceptable expenditures for ARP would be improvement of heating and ventilation systems. So they had prioritized into several from those projects in the buildings that needed the most attention to those that are needed but needed down the road somewhat. So, and I'm being approximate here, there are 12 to 13 projects that total about $12 million. And the first thing that we're attempting to do is to get funding from something called a ROD grant through the Office of State School Facilities. ROD is an acronym for Regular Operating District. They are 40%. So if we get 40% on the dollar of a $12 million, it's about $4+ million. So the intent is to use local share in the form of ARP, which you've talked about,
Yep.
coupled with some of the capital reserve that the board's been putting away.
Yeah.
So if we can do these $12 million of improvements to the buildings, it's really going to be state funding, federal money, and money the board's stowed away in its reserves.
So this ROD grant is a state grant?
The ROD grants are from the state. So
Okay, so this is money, we're using this ARP money in lieu of borrowing. I mean, normally to upgrade these HVAC facilities,
Yep.
that would be capital money.
Yep.
normally.
yeah.
That's good. Speaking of capital spending, the budget shows what I could see on the budget shows very little appropriations earmarked as capital spending. And I guess you answered part of that question. We're using COVID money or ARP money in lieu of capital spending. Is that, other than this HVAC, these HVAC projects, what other capital spending items are out there, equipment and such?
Well, that's a great segue, Pete. I'll get to that segue in a minute, but Mrs. Forsythe had identified the parking lot at Choose, which will be done this summer, and she also identified, I think, middle school bathrooms. Also being done, which starting tomorrow is, which is in the current budget, this building, after putting roofs on all the school buildings and putting a roof on the maintenance transportation building, we are now taking care of the board office last. So that begins tomorrow. And we also have under contract, similar to what we did last year, of tearing out and replacing the bleachers at Glen Landing School. That will happen this summer at Charles Lewis School with the same company. We had a lot of success for them. But the segue is in working with Kathy and working with Mr. Burns, who were very instrumental in helping this year with the development of the school budget. I thought it was prudent to lay off of so many projects as we were waiting a little bit of transition in the district. So with that said, I'm pleased to introduce to everyone our new business administrator, who will, I'm sure next year we will have a lot more traction. Gene McCauley is here, and we're glad to have him tonight. So Gene, welcome to Gloucester Township Public Schools.
Thank you.
I think the projects I listed are enough to dip your toes in for the summer, and but I think if I'm hoping in what you're questioning is, normally we have several projects that we do here, because we always are very good, the board's very good stewards of its buildings. And I think these things are needed. It will keep us busy, and as we, approach future budgets, we will probably have increased scope of capital improvements.
School routes and things like that in
Yep.
the future. Yeah. Welcome, Mr. Marcoli. Welcome.
Thank you.
Another question, built into this budget, are there support staff or instruction staff pay raises built into this budget? There's nothing specific, it's all just sort of anticipated, or is it sort of specific?
Well, there are several hundred of our district staff members that are covered under current collective bargaining agreements. So there are those increases that have already been approved by the board of prior contracts that we have put into the budget to, the assumption is if staff members' satisfactory performance is going to stay here for the next year and they get, renewed, there's going to be movement on the guide. So that's been factored into the budget.
One last question, I see there's no debt service, no payment of principal and interest in this budget. Because they have no debt. Because we've been funding these projects that you just talked about, and in the past, we funded them with current capital and current appropriated money, not borrowed money. Where does that fit in with, though, with this, what's the status of this energy reduction program that's been ongoing for the last few years? Part of that program was to borrow $10 million-ish, I think. Where is it standing for that debt? Where is that standing?
You're referring to the Energy Savings Improvement Plan, or ESIP?
Yes.
And the concept of an ESIP, it's a good question, it's in the budget. Typically Fund 40 is where we fund debt service for building improvements. And ESIP is a little bit of a different animal per se, insofar as the money is, the savings occur in current expense or Fund 10, so our payment for that loan is also now incur an expense instead of Fund 40.
It's a self-funding debt type of thing, yeah.
Yes.
So there is debt, the school district does have that debt, but we're just not carrying it. I mean, so there is debt incurred by the school district, that debt.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, those are my questions. Good job with the budget this year.
Thank you. Denise?
Yes, if I saw the numbers correctly.
Denise, can you tell us who you are? Sorry, just because we have Judy.
Denise Boyne. If I saw the numbers correctly, the total budget number was $53,000,008, but I believe the tax levy was $53,000,003. What accounts for the difference?
Was it on this presentation?
Yeah.
It's last year.
Last page before. Yes.
58, well, for fiscal year 24, could you have been looking at fiscal year 22 and then fiscal year 24? There's the swing. It's different years that were presented on that.
What's the total tax levy for this year?
Total tax levy will be identical to last year, which is 53,831,761.
Okay, I probably saw the 8 as a 3.
It's on there as a previous year, to be fair.
Because
No, I
it's the
probably
difference is the
read it.
debt service.
53.3 was the tax
See,
levy
there's 53.3,
without
there's
debt service
53.8
for
without,
year
because there's no
21,
debt service.
22.
It's a different year.
I know.
With
But
debt
that's
service,
the-
it was
that's what she's
53.
putting.
Yes, it is.
That's, and that accounts for the difference.
Here,
Okay.
Yes, Dina?
Hi, Dina Hendry in Somerdale. I have a couple questions, and before I begin, thank you for posting the awesome budget that enabled me to look at it while I was on lunch today. I have a question, on the second page. It says rents and royalties. Who do we rent to? And shouldn't this increase?
Talking
be like
revenue?
rental increases, new increase?
It's on the user friendly one.
Talking rent revenue?
Yeah,
We get money from Latchkey, we rent them space and they pay us for that.
and, okay, so let's not raise much, Kate. Let's not do that. And then, it says total revenue and local sources, and so it went from last year was $2,000, and then this year is $60,000 that we're looking for revenue, is that correct? Still same on the second page. It says total revenues from local sources, what is that?
It's a variety of things.
Where you see
It's
that?
not a,
That's
Is
the
it
job.
user-friendly?
No, I'd have to go.
the actual vote.
It's on, she's printed there.
It's not on
You want it?
You're looking on your user-friendly budget right now?
Yes, user-friendly budget.
Yeah, no, local sources, what's the number you're talking about?
It says total revenues from local sources, last year was $2,000, but this year, hopefully, it will be $60,000. That's a lot of revenue.
Yeah, on there,
Actually, it's,
miscellaneous, isn't it?
actually, it's interest earned on capital reserve. It's on the wrong row.
Say it again?
I think you're on the wrong row.
Probably.
What you're referring to is $2,000 from,
Yes,
interest earned on capital reserve funds.
correct.
So the theory is, Mrs. Henry, good evening.
Hi.
We have money that the board, at the end of the school year, when we don't spend all the money, the board can earmark money into capital reserve, and then you can put roofs and sidewalks, and they can do capital improvements at your buildings.
That's
And when you
agreeable.
put that money away,
Uh-huh.
the state compels you, if you earn interest on what you're keeping in the bank temporarily, okay, and since interest rates currently in an inflationary trend we have in the country have spiked, we don't anticipate $2,000 anymore, and we have a lot more money in capital reserve, so we anticipate making interest income from the bank.
That's awesome. What is the student activity revenue? Student fund revenue? Is that the laptops?
We don't have the user-friendly budget.
Yeah, we don't have that. We're normally not supposed to post that until after the board
That was actually put
adopts
up
the
a little
budget.
bit too early. The user-friendly
Well, I
budget.
mean, I'm kind of glad because how can we have a public meeting about a budget that we have no idea what the budget is?
You're always entitled to the advertised budget,
Yeah,
which is always available.
okay.
Keep going.
Yep, keep going.
She's not
So-
used to transparency.
Yeah, actually gets advertised, you're right.
Okay, so
Right.
with
It is
this,
advertised.
this is the district budget, correct? Does each school have a budget?
No,
No,
So, why?
it's never really
It's
been,
part of the district budget.
So, a school, like, for instance, Choose, a big school, right, is entitled to the same amount of money that Glendora is used?
No.
no.
No,
So,
it's
like, when some, like,
prorated.
because some people ask, like, you know, what's our budget? And we want to know, like, what is this budget for the school? Like, what is going into our schools?
The individual schools have certain accounts that are provided to them, and it's based on student counts. So the answer to your question is yes. A Choose school, which has significantly more students than Glendora, has more resources afforded to it in this budget. It's just homogenized in this budget. We don't break it down into
So
detail.
we can't drill down. This is like the, big scope picture of it.
Correct.
Okay, with that, I saw in the agenda that there's $25,000 going for updated, security systems. Can you elaborate on that?
That, we believe, are additional security cameras. In the emergency reserve, you're allowed to use it for for security improvements. And there has been quite a bit of security work this year, but principals have asked for additional cameras in certain parts of their building so they have better eyes on their building. and that would supplement some of those requests.
So would this be for the whole entire district, or is it gonna be in phases for like school, like you're gonna work on 2 schools and then 3 schools?
No, all the schools are getting upgrades to their head ends and the security cameras. These would be supplemental cameras.
And all of our cameras currently work right now, like there's no dead cameras, there's no like malfunctioning cameras, like all of our cameras are,
As of this minute right now,
yeah,
I'm going to take a guess and say they're all working.
okay. And then with your, being that we can't talk about this awesome user-friendly budget, which I had a lot of questions on, your parking expansion for Choose, is that gonna give more spaces? What is that? Like, it's $300,000. What is it gonna do?
Actually, the answer is yes. Part of the scope of that will give more spaces. I think there's a grand total of 11 more spaces.
And a better flow. It's the flow
Yes.
yeah, the flow's the
But
problem.
since the teachers and the parents can't always agree in the morning on drop-off or pickup, we have decided in the scope to create a separate lane for parents that is away from the teachers parking in the morning, and that will be installed.
Okay. One other question about the user-friendly budget. It looks like everybody that is listed for, on this budget is getting about a 3.2% raise, which is pretty cool. But also on this user-friendly budget, it looks like, there is one salary that's actually going down. Can you elaborate on that? And that there is no more bonus?
I don't know what that references to.
Do you have the line item that it is?
Yeah, it's actually, our superintendent's budget. It looks like last year it was 201, $317,000, and this year says 199,326.
I don't have the answer for that.
I don't know that one. I know another one, but not that one. One of the
And
secretary's
there,
not getting
you,
replaced.
you had a $30,000 bonus, but now it's not there.
Bonus?
I was just
I would-
going from
I
last
would-
year to this year.
I would certainly applaud the board if I were to get a $30,000 bonus, but I haven't realized that yet.
Okay. I was just going from one year's budget to this year's budget. Okay,
I saw that too.
yeah. All right, thank you.
Any other? Yes, Pete?
Pete Heinball, Secretary. I did think of an additional question. In this budget, what's budgeted, built into the budget for the amount for the SRO for the officers from the township that are in the school? What's that budget?
It is the same amount as it was in the current year. $300,000 has been budgeted.
Okay. There's been no talk of renegotiating that number or anything like that?
Not right now.
No.
When I compare this
Yes,
number,
why would we put that in the budget?
I don't have access to all 500 plus school districts, but when I compare that number to other school districts throughout New Jersey, that's one of the very highest numbers.
Talk to the
You know, the
township.
service is fine, everything about the officers and the program and the activities are fine. It's just the price tag that
My head's not.
seems to be out of line compared to other New Jersey school districts. Making that comment.
All right.
Oh, 2 more.
So, just off the way, he just had-
Terry, can you tell us who you are, just because we have Gene here who's new?
Terry Fretz, like you.
What's your last name?
Fretz. F-R-E-C-Z. And he just made me, his talk that he just made me think of. So there's no, you're not anticipating getting any more than the 3 officers that we have now for 11 schools plus the other 2 or whatever schools that we have?
No.
I understand, but there's a lot of people.
Yes.
Ellie Rudder of Blackwood. I just wanted to this isn't any question, but I said, back in February, I spoke about the importance of counselors in our school and the need to improve upon our ratios. While I understand this is very necessary and will positively impact our students and staff, I know this was a really big ask. I was beyond excited to see the posting for multiple school counselors and even more excited to see it tonight in our budget. So I wanted to say thank you. Thank you for seeing the need for our schools and our students and staff and recognizing this is beneficial as well. I truly believe this will be a tremendous help for our counselors, our teachers, our support staff, and most importantly, our students. So I just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none? The public portion is closed for agenda items. Can we have the report of the business administrator, please?
It is budget as presented. Do you want me to read the whole budget?
No. Just the item 2.1 as listed. Just need to say 2.1 as listed.
2.1 as is.
Can I get a motion, please, to approve the budget?
Second.
Who's that?
Who was first?
It's all, wait, no, because there's 3.0. It's all encompassing, so it's all of 2.1 is in this one, and then we
Then
do
there's 3,
3.9.
and now there's
Yeah.
another one.
Can we do who did first and second, please?
Linda
Ellen
and
and
Ellen.
Linda.
Ellen and Linda.
In that
Ellen?
order?
Yes.
Yes.
Ellen. Roll call, please.
Do we get questions?
Yeah, questions.
Oh, I'm sorry. Questions? Discussions? Anyone?
So, yeah, I have a question. On the user-friendly budget portion, that's legally allowed to be put out ahead of time for people
It is.
to
It
view,
is.
correct?
Yes.
Okay, so there's nothing stopping us from ever doing that?
Nothing's stopping us. You don't have to, but you can.
Okay.
Can we do it with the initial one that goes out? The one that we send to the county?
I don't think that's ready yet. At that
No, it has to be approved by the
Has to be
county, and then
approved by the county
as soon as you
first.
can advertise it, you can
Then you
post
can put
it.
it out, yeah.
Can we actually put it with the agenda?
Sure.
That'd be really cool. Then people don't have to go hunting for it.
Only like 180 pages.
Good. The answer was good. I mean, the question was good.
Anyone else?
We will, I promise.
Jen, did you mean the user-friendly one or the,
Yes,
okay.
yeah.
And 23, it's not as big yet.
Okay. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Dentino,
Yes.
Mrs. Fritz,
Yes.
Mr. Gibbons,
Yes.
Mrs. Gilch,
Yes.
Ms. Gore,
Yes.
Mr. Marks,
Yes.
Mrs. Reese,
Yes.
Mrs. O'Donnell,
Yes.
Mrs. Johnson.
Yes.
The motion passes.
Do we have any new business?
Ask the board to, want me to approve the
Yes, that one
submission
read.
of application to New Jersey Department of Education for a federal school-based mental health services grant up to a maximum of $375,000. We want to apply for the grant. Today's the deadline to get it approved to apply for this grant. It's a no-brainer.
This is the ROD grant?
No, this
No.
is for mental health.
It's separate.
It's also a
Okay.
state grant, but it has
Right,
nothing
it's
to do with
school-based mental,
Oh,
it's a
school-based.
state-based mental health services grant.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
I'll second.
He got it by a hair. By a hair.
Dan and Keith, okay. Roll call, please. Oh, any questions? Discussions? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Dentino,
Yes.
Mrs. Fritz,
Yes.
Mr. Gibbons,
Yes.
Mrs. Gilch,
Yes.
Ms. Gore,
Yes.
Mr. Marks,
Yes.
Mrs. Reese,
Yes.
Mrs. O'Donnell,
Yes.
Mrs. Johnson.
Yes.
The motion passes.
All right, at this time, do we have any regular comments from the public? Yes.
Tina Hendry again, Sunnydale. How could the board vote without seeing this user-friendly? Or am I completely wrong? Was I not supposed to see the user-friendly, but yet you guys have the user-friendly? I'm confused. Like, how could we
No,
vote,
I
how could
was
we vote
saying
on
it, we
budget
would
if
put
we
it out.
don't
Right.
know line for
He's
line
just talking
what
about putting it out.
budgets?
They all had access, but did we not put it out to the public? Is that-
But that's
did
what
not.
the question
Right.
was around that. It wasn't
Right.
about
Yeah.
nobody seeing it here,
Yeah,
it was
so
about.
how can we have a public hearing without having a budget to look and to see and to dissect and to scrutinize. Like, that's not fair. But I'm glad that you're saying, yay, let's do this now, going forward.
We spent a lot of time building the budget with different pieces of it that we've gone over with the finance committee for many months. So they are aware of different pieces of the budget altogether they've been aware of what we're putting in the budget for a long time.
Understood, but how can we have a public hearing about the budget, to ask questions about the budget, to raise questions about the budget, for you to answer questions about the budget, if we didn't have this user-friendly budget in front of us to see where these numbers came from? Do you understand?
They've had more than that.
No, they're talking about public versus the board.
Yeah.
Public.
I agree.
Well,
We'll get that posted earlier.
I mean, it makes,
it's
like,
what's
if we
what's
didn't have
advertised
this,
is what she has during here.
having a public hearing is just a horse and pony show. You know, so to look at it and to see it and to ask questions. I mean, I had other questions, and I was just like, well, I'm not supposed to have it, so then therefore I shouldn't ask the questions, and maybe there is a second reading. You know, like, we're all new to this. I don't think everybody in this room knows for sure. I mean, you guys do, because you guys are the experts, but
We have.
here,
Mr.
we
Heinball
don't.
has requested.
Yeah.
Mr. Heinball has requested the budget long before the budget hearing several times, and it's been posted. So it may have been an oversight that it didn't go up
Okay.
this time, but Mr. Gibbons got on that and made sure that it was posted.
That's why he's awesome. Thank you.
Okay.
Anyone else? Yes, Pete.
Pete Heinball, Sicklerville. I'm glad to hear that we're gonna make it a habit to, because we can, and we're not prohibited for anything, that we're gonna post this budget to the public before the budget hearing. I think that makes all kinds of sense. And I think this board in general should lean toward more transparency and more disclosure when you can. I mean, I think this board will do that. It sounds like this board does think about that and will do that. But we need to lean toward transparency and lean toward disclosure, not what can we or can't we, or what do we have to or don't have to. Just lean toward transparency. And I have confidence this board thinks the same way.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
I know.
I got one too.
It's literally from Gloucester Township
We all
Public
have them.
Schools.
I thought that questions would be fewer, so the timing of my announcement tonight, I thought everyone would be in their car on the way home, Mrs. Henry. But someone asked a few too many questions about the user-friendly budget, and we were delayed.
All right, Chip Phillips, real quick. Is there anything in the budget about the science lab? They already approved it, but is there anything in there? Because you know it's down the road. I just don't know how long this road is. And I know it's a budget.
Yes, the board is depositing money into the capital reserve, and if they elect to put in science labs, that could be a potential funding source.
That's what I need. Thank you.
All right, anyone else? Seeing,
All right?
okay. I'm just going to close the public portions. Mr. Bilodeau?
Well, you know, every once in a while, you have a ball that you throw against the wall, and it keeps coming back to you. So Kathy Forsythe is one of those really, really nice balls that keeps coming back. So Kathy, I know that we pressed you back into service after being a great employee here. I certainly appreciate you and what Steve Burns have done. We collaborated very well. Thank you for putting up with me. Since I don't look over your shoulder that often when it comes to the budget. But you are a great person. You're a great person, and it's a pleasure to work with you. So I'm going to miss you. So
I'm going
thanks,
to miss
Kathy.
everybody.
Anyone else have board comments?
I just want to say that I'm very excited about the mental health counselors as well. I think it is, it's well needed, so I appreciate the finance committee making sure that that happens. That's all.
Anyone else? I would like to thank the Finance Committee and everyone that has had anything to do with the budget. The taxpayers, I'm sure, will appreciate the fact that there is no raise in taxes for the second year in a row. So yay us. And also welcome to our new VA, Mr. McCauley, and thank you, Kathy, for everything you did.
I would say anytime, but I'm not too sure.
All right. Can I have a motion to adjourn, please?
Whoa. We got one and two.
Moved by everybody, seconded by everybody.
Kia and Linda?
All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Closed.
Key and Linda.
Yeah, I got that one.
That we do, we fight.
That's the toughest
We
part.
fight over that one.
Oh, yeah.